The Reformation is worth going back to because it was a time of progression. It's a period wherein people were willing to think differently, which goes to show how people are getting smarter over time.
What's worth going back to is checking and reaffirming religion. Because of the abuses and manipulation of the church, the Protestants were brave enough to call out their shortcomings as religious leaders and took action in rediscovering real faith. This is worth going back to because there are underlying issues that still exist today within different religions that need to be addressed and reformed.
Promotion of education and literacy is worth going back to in the Reformation period. Modern democracy, skepticism, capitalism, individualism, human rights, and many other modern ideals arose from the Reformation. The Reformation strengthened literacy in Europe and generated greater interest in learning.
The Reformation is worth revisiting because it is a vivid example of how religious transformation can trigger structural changes that have far-reaching implications for economic and political growth.
One thing that is worth going back to in the Reformation would be the art. Art during this time was no longer limited to religious themes, so artists were able to hone their creativity and challenge their limits in drawing.
What's worth going back to is that it was important that issues such as corruption and other issues of political, social, and economic issues happening within the Catholic Church was addressed. The Reformation period was able to prevent what could have been a chaos now. People were also given a voice, which was inspired by the German monk Martin Luther, and now had the concept of freely choosing what to believe in.
Reformation paved the way for the birth of one of the three major branches of Christianity, which is the Protestantism. The period also made a huge positive changes on how the churches, the people, and the society should behave in accordance to what is written in the Holy Book or Scriptures.
The Reformation is worth going back to during the time when Martin Luther started attacking the Catholic Church's corrupt practice of selling of indulgences, where people would have to pay for their sins to be forgiven by the clergy, enabling them to go to heaven.
This period is not worth going back to because this was a time where people were willing to kill for their beliefs and ideologies. It became their basis of defining what's right and what's wrong.
What's not worth going back to is, of course, the corruption that happened during the Reformation era. It's never a good idea to go back to a time where followers are victimized by their religious leaders and were taught to worship material things over their God.
And cardinals acted more like rulers than spiritual leaders. They assumed roles on both political and divine authority. When church leadership was blinded by wealth and power, the Reformation uncovered the rampant corruption that led people to question its views and wanted change.
Church's corruption, which has tarnished Catholic Church as a result of money-making activities such as the sale of indulgences, is not worth revisiting.
One thing that is not worth going back to is the battles. Many lives were lost, and we know for one that we cannot bring them back.
Despite the positive changes the Reformation period brought in the modern world today, it's not worth going back to the Reformation period as it was also a violent era as opinions and beliefs were divided.
It is not worth going back to as it was the time when the churches and the priests got increasingly corrupt and abused the power and the authority that they have, which is definitely not right.
What is not worth going back to was the religious aspect of the Reformation, which was accompanied by ambitious political leaders who sought to manipulate the Reformation as means to expand their power and influence.
One takeaway I'm keeping in mind is how the Reformation was a pivotal point in history, proving that a reformation of a certain system is what the society needs to develop change and progress.
I think that what we can learn from the notable figures from the Reformation is to be consistent with your commitment and dedication.
My takeaway for the Reformation era would be that it is valid to question the system that we are in, and if we want to have reforms about it, we can speak out, so as long as it is for the pursuit of the betterment of society.
The Reformation of the 16th century was the revolution of religion in Europe as a result of the grievances of the Christian Church, which became the foundation of the Europeans' cultural identity.